Hello, everyone. It's a real pleasure to be all together after a long time of no see for a lot of us. A special place in our hearts for PAFA, each one of us on his or her own way, and also in our professional paths. And I feel really honored to moderate this session with all previous presidents of PAFA. So thank you all. Thank you to PAFA for this opportunity. I will start with you, Sebastian. And as we all know, you had the honor of being the first president to be involved, especially in the formation stage of PAFA. So I will start with some preliminary questions with you. And if you can tell us, where did it all start?
Thank you very much, Asma. First, I want to appreciate PAFA, the current president, and the board members for giving me this great opportunity to once again relate with an organization I co-started with some other members of the board. We are 10 years down the line, and it has been a tremendous growth for PAFA. Asma, you asked me how did it all started. Yes, PAFA was inaugurated in Senegal on the 5th of May, 2011. I was still the ICANN president. But before I go into the details, I want to specially recognize a group of very active individuals and PLOs in Africa who I will refer to as the founding fathers of PAFA. In no particular order, I want to mention Mr. Getingi of Kenya, Aziz of Oneka, Senegal, Jalil of Tunisia. But I want to specially appreciate these gentlemen I want to refer to as the founding fathers of PAFA. They held series of roundtable talks, discussions, workshops with our facilitators and benefactors, IFAC, World Bank, and African Development Bank. How did it all get started? Years back before the inauguration, a steering committee was set up by World Bank and African Development Bank in conjunction with IFAC to come up with position paper on the formation of PAFA. The steering committee sat in various countries: Cameroon, Nigeria, Benin, South Africa, Kenya. And within a period of 2 years, we were able to, as it were, hammer out a constitution for PAFA. I want to pay special tributes to Museveni of South Africa, Vixen Nkube, and a host of other, also Kus of Namibia. These gentlemen who were there from the start block until we took off contributed immensely to the writing of the Constitution and operational guidance for PAFA. I can tell you it was never an easy task. I'll just stop there for now until maybe we get into the crux of the issues relating to the formation of PAFA. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much, Sebastian. And indeed, listening to you, it took a village to get PAFA started with all these people that you mentioned and all these stakeholders, also like World Bank, AFDB, and IFAC. Can you tell us more about the role that these stakeholders played in giving birth to PAFA?
I would be doing a lot of disservice to these institutions if I fail to capture the very critical and central role they played. It was really much. Because you realize that before PAFA came into existence, there were pockets of people who meet the real definition of PAOs. Only very few of them were IFAC member bodies. The host of them were in various stages of growth and development. Most of them had financial problems, low capacity building, and so on. But with the financing for the World Bank and also the supply of very highly skilled manpower, I remember Patrick Kubuya of Kenya and a host of others, they really guided us through the initial stages, because the whole thing would have experienced a stillbirth if not for the doggedness and resoluteness of these individuals. Really, we had to manage diversity, and I must give a lot of credit to IFAC. If I remember, it was Russell, and then Edo Lokere of World Bank with Patrick Kubuya expended a lot of energy and resources to make sure they galvanize all our efforts to manage our diversity and to play down on those very things that were very sensitive.
General, if I could perhaps just come in briefly, and I actually want to remind everybody that the genesis of PAFA took place at an ex-SAFA Congress in Nairobi and led to a document or a statement called the Nairobi Declaration. And the essence of the Nairobi Declaration was African accountants must speak with one voice. And from that idea came the initial discussions between ex-SAFA, PAFA, leadership like mp4 and Christian Megan, Aziz Dieye from the Francophone countries, which culminated in 2010 in Benin, where I recall crafting a constitution that would balance the interests and the structures of ABWA, of ex-SAFA, of the Francophone African countries. And you're quite correct. It was sad that we were of one continent, but had so little understanding of each of the three primary groups that needed to come together. I recall, and Dr. Musa, I'm sure Dr. Musa is going to remember the process within ex-SAFA. And I was the dissolving president. And I remember having long discussions with the ex-SAFA board about whether this was the right thing to do, to go from a strong, vibrant, active, but limited in terms of its representation. It did not represent Africa. To take ex-SAFA, dissolve it, and commit the resources. And I can assure every one of the present, and I know they will support me, it was absolutely the right decision. We have become a Pan-African federation. We now are a group of African accountants. You mentioned the role that certain of the leaders at the time within their individual PAOs needed to play, and that was the role of being ambassadors for this new idea of saying, let's shelve our differences, let's focus on the commonalities we have. We professional accountants, we're Africans, so let's make this work. It was a difficult birth, but it was a highly successful one.
Thank you.
What would you say, Kus or Sebastian or Dr. Musa, what would you say was the main success factor in overcoming this challenge, as you said, of diversity, Francophone versus Anglophone, coming from regional perspectives to a continent perspective? What was the main, what made it happen? What made it happen?
If I could, firstly, the fact that when you get accountants speaking to each other, we're all in the same challenging circumstances in our local environment. So there was great commonality. Secondly, I think in the conversations, and General Sebastian referred to the role of the World Bank and IFAC. And both of these made each of the three groupings that constituted that primary, discussions, made us realize we would be stronger together on the global stage, on the international stage. We would have influence that was bigger because we were speaking for Africa. And if we look at the logical conclusion, we look at the MOU between PAFA and the African Union as an end result of that combination of representation. Individually, not one of those three groupings could have achieved that level of recognition. So both World Bank, who provided funding and guidance, referred to that, and IFAC, who nurtured and got us to keep talking, because sometimes it got quite heated in terms of balancing interests and look at how the presidents have moved around the regions that we crafted. There's a commitment to participation. So for me, those global players who nurtured the idea, and then the recognition that together we're stronger than and have far more influence and ability to help each other as a whole continent.
And keeping the communication going. I think that was, as you all mentioned, key in keeping momentum for the project, because it could have fallen out anytime, and it didn't. It didn't, thanks to all these factors. I think these are messages for PAFA to keep in their head, because these are recurring problems. They will happen, and they will happen differently in the future. So reflecting on the past and how PAFA managed to overcome these big challenges is always, I believe, key to continuing in the right direction. So thank you so much for these insights.
Just add more to what Kuz said. The World Bank, the African Development Bank, and IFAC played very great roles in molding, in managing the diversity. A lot of public relations work was done by our members at the sub-regional level, that gradually people left their entrenched positions and left their silos to come up to the open ground to embrace each other. I think principally, again, the African can-do spirit, or despite all our diversity, we are brothers and sisters from the same continent. Ultimately, people gave grounds. They gave grounds. Okay, let's give this a trial. Let's give this a trial. And before you knew what was happening, we were at a cruise level. I never, ever believed that we could overcome our difficulties and our diversity so easily, because it was really, it was a hangover of the colonial era, if you would say. How can I, in Nigeria, not relate with somebody in Benin without him suspecting of my motives and intentions? So the divide was there, and it's amazing. I want to give free credit to our benefactors, because they told us, look, there are other regional bodies. You are not doing a one-off thing. You have the Asian, the European, and we drew strength from the successes recorded by those people. And each time we are discussing, they will tell us, look, these people have done this. Why will yours be an exception? It was terrible. It was terrible. But it's okay. They say the end justifies the means, and I'm happy that we really overcame those teething problems that would have destroyed everything even before we took up the ground. Again, thanks to the members I had, the first set of board members I had, they were men and women with great vision and passion for the success of PAFA.
Yeah. Dr. Musa, do you have any other perspectives to add to this?
Thank you, Asma. I think the only thing that has not been mentioned is the level of honesty and transparency in discussions. When we had problems, we will all honestly discuss the problems. So if somebody brought a proposal that didn't make sense, on the table, he will be told it doesn't make sense, and these are the reasons why he doesn't say it. And because he's a professional, he appreciates that, and then life moved on. And that attitude was extremely useful especially in the first 3 years. Because
Interesting.
whatever problem Sebastian is bringing up, we did have those problems, and people were told it doesn't make sense. These are the reasons why it makes sense. Your arguments don't make sense here. So please come aboard, and this is the way we should be going. And we all say it through. So I thought that should be mentioned.
That is amazing. It just shows that our ethical values of honesty as professionals have helped us a lot in this journey. So yeah, that is a very insightful thought.
Asma,
yes.
Asma, if I could add on to what Dr. Musa was referring to, I recall a favorite phrase that Vixen Mulbe at the time, our CEO, would use in opening meetings, and when he's asked where he's from, and he'd always say, "I'm an African, I'm just by chance traveling on a Zambian passport." and there was a lot of work that went into creating an understanding that we're professional accountants from Africa. And yes, let us give each other the time and the space to wrap our heads around different challenges and recognize the differences in structures. For me, one of the watershed moments was the Madagascar position paper, where for the first time it felt to me we started creating a broad-based understanding of Francophone PAOs and the unique challenges that those institutes were facing, and where there was a commitment. And as a result of the ability for PAFA at the time to be inclusive, we had great participation from FIDEF, and it was a new international partner we were talking to. So that recognition that we need to find a unique solution, appropriate or not solution, ways to support Francophone PAOs in their growth and development route. For me, that was a crowning achievement of the whole integration of accountants in Africa.
Yeah, I fully agree with you. I think that was the momentum was created in that event of Madagascar, organized by FIDEF. Yeah.
Can I ask you, Asma, because I know you're the facilitator, but didn't you feel like a bridge between two language groups?
Yeah, because I'm happy to share my perspective on that, and definitely I feel very proud today to have been a part of that bridge, or part of the people who constructed that bridge between the Francophone world and the Anglophone world, and I feel that has continued, and it has not stopped, which is a great achievement.
I think there is almost an extension of that role, and we'd look to new leaders within PAFA to take the representation into North Africa even further than it has gone already. Because if you were to ask me where are we perhaps lesser represented in terms of the mix of PAOs, it might be the North African section. So I think you were referring to the need for institutional knowledge to remain within an organization. And I'd be saying to future presidents and future PAFA board members, you have to take a leaf from Asma's role and build these bridges and keep building, keep working at them so that we become even more inclusive than we are at the moment.
Definitely. It's all about continuing building bridges. That's,
yes.
That's the right wording. Thank you so much, Kus, for these insights. I'm going to ask you specific questions now, Kus, and you had the privilege to be the president covering the 7th and 8th year of existence of PAFA. So it is like a good junction between, let's say, the first decade of PAFA's existence and the coming 10 years. So my question to you will be more about reflecting on the last 10 years achievements and with the objective of extracting learning lessons for the next 10 years. Because as we all know, the past is, messages from the past are always important for the present and for the future. So what do you see as PAFA's main achievements during the last 10 years, and achievements that PAFA should continue building on, and what were the main success factors in making these achievements for the last 10 years?
Thanks. Thank you, Asman. I would almost kick off by saying that drive to be inclusive, the spirit of support, and I want to highlight a most beautiful example, and that is the story of OCAM. OCAM, who will be hosting a COA in November, from a fledgling PAO that became part of the PAFA family and has been supported and assisted in a form and a fashion that is appropriate to OCAM. So we're inclusive but appropriate. And they're hosting the African Congress of Accountants. I mean, if that is not a success story, and one that we hope is going to be followed on many occasions as PAFA grows, that's the one, inclusive and appropriate. When I look at where we are going as PAFA, I think we started from a private sector perspective. Frequently, the PAO is a private practice-based organization. We've realized that we have got as many, if not more, counterparties, colleagues, brothers in accounting, sisters in accounting in the public sector. And the initiatives to use what the private sector or the PAOs can bring to similar government organizations, or in supporting the development of skills, for me, that must be one of the major drives for PAFA going forwards, to hold hands with the public sector, develop skills. And I think of the professional initiative, the accounting professional initiative, where it's already started. I would love to see that getting more traction and support and engagement at the African Union PAFA leadership level. At the same time, we need to recognize most of our economies are built on SME businesses, and we need those foundational skills of bookkeeping in far greater numbers to support small businesses. So looking at the accounting technician work that's currently being done, for me, those are the two big projects or spaces I'd really like to see PAFA moving into or working in, and that is public sector and also foundational accounting skills.
While we are looking ahead and thinking about the future, how do you see also PAFA's role in assisting its members in embracing the fourth industrial revolution in the coming years? How do you see, how can PAFA help more in this field?
Asma, I would also like to go back to a real life example, and I think what we have in PAFA is a collection of professional accounting organizations that have already created a lot of solutions within their own domains related to leveraging of technology. And PAFA can play, I think, an important role in facilitating the sharing so that it is, particularly for a smaller, younger institute, they must almost be able to go to the PAFA app shop, app shop or website and pull solutions that they can modify. I think of the fantastic story about Kenya and ISPAC, the Kenyan Institute, and their online election process and the e-ballot system. And it was, in my mind, 10 years ahead of itself. It's there and it can be used, particularly when you've got to get a large coverage and you want to get more people, more of your members participating. That is a fantastic solution in Kenya that I'm sure, with a little bit of support from PAFA, could be made available, because the world needs to leverage, and we need, as professional accountants, to find those gems and say, let's polish them up, let's share them amongst ourselves.
Definitely, it's all about leveraging, and as a federation, that should be one of the critical and main roles of PAFA, is leveraging us on what exists already. I will now turn to Dr. Musa, because I think PAFA has the privilege to benefit from the wide expertise in public sector of Dr. Musa. So I'm going to ask you, Dr. Musa, specific questions on this domain. So what role you think PAFA should play in enhancing transparency and accountability in the public sector?
Thank you, Asma. I think if you talk of public sector in Africa, you can't ignore the AU Agenda of 2063.
Yeah.
Now, the key items in there are good governance, democracy, respect for human rights, justice, and the rule of law. Where PAFA comes in is in good governance. And what is good governance? You speak to accountability, reporting, public finance management, and things like that. And each of those are quite important for us as a public institution. So in terms of roles, I mentioned 5 roles. PAFA, the roles are human roles, but they can be undertaken by institutions. So the first critical role is joining hands and working together. So PAFA must join hands and work together with other stakeholders within Africa. And what are we talking about here? We're talking of, for example, accountant generals, auditor generals, parliamentary oversight institution. These are all structures that exist. So PAFA must make itself relevant to these and work together with these and push together common initiatives. That is number 1. Number 2, this has been mentioned, sharing and imparting knowledge. As Kul said, we have a wealth of knowledge from PAOs and individual accountants and auditors. These are minds that we should be able to use to push together initiatives that are critical for Africa. But in order to share and impart knowledge, you must have a depository. So I think before we share and impart knowledge, we must collect the knowledge. And here I'm talking of knowledge about budgets within Africa from every country, tax laws, public audit reports, public finance management reviews and reports from these as well, information that is available in the World Bank. It should be available within Africa itself. So PAFA needs to be a depository of this critical information, and this information can be shared and imparted on others. So that is the third role. But also I think critically, PAFA must spearhead learning and capacity building. The API is one issue that speaks to this, speaks to learning and capacity building within Africa. We want to be able to reach a stage where the World Bank does not need to do a ROSC report for each African country. That should be a role for PAFA to undertake. So going forward, say in 10, 15 years, these are issues we should be able to do ourselves. So these are the roles I think are quite important for us to appreciate. And PAFA, if they fulfill all these roles, they'll be doing very, very well.
Really great input, Dr. Musa. And I like the idea specifically of PAFA being a depository of all this available information. That is an excellent point. And why not, as you say, the PAFA starting to do their own ROSC reports for the African countries instead of giving that role to the World Bank. That's really very insightful. You also talked about the importance of the African professionalization initiative. Can you give us more ideas about what role we could play? Because this is a very important project. I think PAFA is, and we should all be proud of. This is a major achievement for PAFA. But how can we make it more impactful for the profession?
I think it must be known that after my life as an academic for about 30 years, I was appointed the Auditor General of Tanzania in about 2014, January 2014. Yeah. Up until 2019, I was the Auditor General of Tanzania, and I was heavily involved in AFROSAI, the African Association of Supreme Audit Institutions.
Okay.
And in that life, we discovered a few things. One, in terms of numbers alone, the number of professional accountants and auditors within Africa is very, very limited. We fit almost in the same region as medical doctors, very few in numbers. And number two, we have this dichotomy between private sector accountants and public sector accountants.
Yeah.
And in our training, a lot of private sector accountants know very little public sector accounting, for example, government accounting. So our tertiary institutions do not have the right syllabus to be able to produce capable public sector accountants. So that was number two. If you consider those two, you see there is a need for a redevelopment of the process of putting together an accountant. So we need to address the syllabus, but we don't also want to alienate people who are practicing now in the public sector, but they don't have certificates.
Yeah.
So there has to be a way of recognizing their competencies now.
Yeah.
So the initiative addresses both. It addresses the availability and the development of a syllabus. It is going to be a structure, not something that PAOs must take on. No, they could modify and adapt and use it for their own countries.
Yeah.
So putting together a syllabus is one, but also number two is pegging those who are in practice to be able to possess a certificate to say they're at that level, a certain level, and therefore they can say they are professional or semi-professional accountants or auditors.
It's about inclusivity again. We have to.
Yes, so we don't want to alienate and say, no, you are useless, you didn't study properly, so you can't be taken up. We must make sure that we take them on board, we peg them and say you should reach that level so you can work towards achieving your full professional qualification if you meet these and these standards. So those two are the most critical aspects the African Professionalization Initiative is seeking to achieve. But as you know, we can't do that separately. So the AFROSAI is working together with AFROSAI for the whole of Africa.
Yeah.
But we're also working with accountant generals who are under Ministry of Finance across the whole of Africa. But also we're working with auditor generals across the whole of Africa. And through PAFA, we also wanted to reach all professional accounting organizations. So through this stakeholder engagement, the African Professionalization Initiative is going to be successful. But even more important now is the recognition that we must be diplomatic and use whatever resources we have within Africa, for example, the African Union. And I must be extremely grateful for Pan-African Federation of Accountants because it had already started inroads within the African Union, and we could use that to put together a coalition that is going to push forward this African Professionalization Initiative. You know, the problem is with politicians, something new comes in. If their position are threatened, they'll fight it. They'll fight it.
Yeah.
So in engaging them, we want to seek commonality so that we can go together and make sure that this initiative is going to be successful, because nobody is going to be hurt. Everybody is going to be considered, and we might be able to push forward this big agenda for Africa. I think I'll stop there, and if there's something else, I'll be happy to contribute.
Yeah, you're right, Dr. Musa. We have to have the right keys to talk to politicians and to engage them. And as you say, if we're not capable of influencing our agendas with politicians, then that could be a major constraint. And sometimes it's also about being opportunistic for choosing the right moment to put an agenda point on the table that is of common interest, as you said. So it's also about finding common interests so that there is more buy-in from the politicians. And talking about that, the MOU that PAFA has managed to, and we talked about it earlier, with that PAFA has managed to do with the African Union is also another main achievement that PAFA is proud of. And you also talked about it a little bit. Can you tell us more about how to build on and to leverage on this MOU so that PAFA can influence and get more buy-in in its own activities, like the API and other projects?
The point I'm making here is, if we were able to get into an agreement with the AU at a continent level, this is something that should be able to be done within countries as well. So if there's a message, it's a message for PAOs to be politically relevant in their countries, which means they must engage properly with the Ministry of Finance, with the ministries responsible for public sector, ministries responsible for local government, and engage with them continuously. And then they build relevance. And then if there are views, they'll be asked to provide views, because now you are relevant. If you're not relevant, people just go on and completely ignore you. So that message is extremely important for us to have within Africa, within our PAOs, and I said earlier, within PAFA, as we stated there. As I said, politics have got legs. So it's challenging definitely to engage with politicians, but if you do it properly, there is a lot of mileage that can be gained by engaging in politics. Not as politicians, but to use the influence of politicians in reaching your objectives. And that is what we started to do with the memorandum and understand with the AU. Of course, there is quite a lot of waiting time. They'll tell you, we'll see you next week, and then next week doesn't happen, it happens in 6 months' time. You have to be patient.
And persevere.
And persevere. If you're patient and persevere, or in the long run, you're going to be successful. So that's the second message, patience and perseverance. But I must mention here that engaging in politics could be dangerous, because they could use you to fulfill their own motives, and that is always not a very good place for a professional to be in. So you need to be aware when to jump out when things are hot. And that's simple. It hasn't happened yet, but it may happen in the near future. I know of one accountant general who was very, very intelligent. There was a coup in a country and he didn't take any side. He remained a professional and he's still the auditor general today. If he was taking sides, he would cease to be an auditor general. So political awareness is quite important, not a subject to cover in our training, but as you mature and develop in your career, you need to be politically aware, which is the last point you wanted to make.
Yeah.
Asma, could I pick up a comment from Dr. Musa relating to ROSC reviews and possibly just open that for a little bit of discussion, because I think there is a fantastic opportunity to build the influence of Africa. Frequently, when we have surveys conducted in our countries, they are conducted by people who don't understand Africa. And I think that perhaps the AU, perhaps PAFA, could be saying could engage the World Bank and similar organizations in saying, if you're going to do a ROSC review, can we as PAFA, including the AU, provide a balancing team, a counterparty team to work with the primary team, because we do understand each other better as Africans. I'm thinking of a counterparty team to a ROSC review team to help balance the insights, to create more insights, because I think we may all have seen the conceptual differences that may play a role in how questions are posed, how answers are interpreted. And you look at some survey results and you say, but that is not my country. Where was this person? I don't remember them. I've never seen this country that's described in the outcomes. So maybe that's another area where PAFA, through its ability to engage 56 different PAOs, can provide expertise through the AU to some of these global organizations.
Thank you, Kus. I'm really enjoying this because there are a lot of great ideas that are coming out and I'm learning from. And this just shows that the opportunities for PAFA are just massive. And I'm sure Alta and her team will watch this video and will get a lot of good messages and ideas from this. So this is really great. So I think I will just maybe end this conversation by asking each one of you, and this should be on a more of a fun note. What did you enjoy the most during your mandate as president of PAFA? And I'll start with Sebastian, who is known for his great sense of humor. So if you can tell us something that will kick us off on this, that would be great.
Thank you very much, Asma, for that question. And in fact, it's very, very relevant. Coming from a very solid military background, it was like a fish out of water, having to interact with the civilian sector, having to listen to them. I didn't have to give orders and marching orders and shouting and so on. And what I really enjoyed most was the contributions, the discussions. Somebody gets up and takes me up on any issue. General, we will not accept it. This, just like Dr. Assad said, you see, people bring in their own perspectives forcefully. And I look at my background, I look at the background where I am now, where I'm finding myself, and so this is an entirely difficult mix. But anyway, I was able to navigate. And it wasn't easy. Times I had to suppress the anger, the rage in me to listen up to the people. This never happens in the military. When you are the boss, you are the boss. And being the pioneer president, the first president, there was nothing to fall back on. There was no learning process, no references, no advice, and you had all these diversities, all these differences in culture, language, ethics, behavioral, and so on, coming up, putting a lot of pressure on me. And I am, at times when I look back, I say, how did I navigate? How did I go through this? The most challenging problem I had, Asma, was that we started PAFA with absolutely nothing, not even a piece of paper. Appreciate and thank the two South African professional bodies, SAICA and SAIPA, because they gave us a lot of support, office space, stationaries, and so on and so on. We didn't even have money to pay our chief executive officer, Vixen. How we pulled through those years is like Alice in the Wonderland. I just can't. I said, look, how did we do this? But, I have a principle in life, and that is failure is not an option. Yeah. To me, being the first president of PAFA or pioneer president was a very big challenge. And for me, coming with the type of leadership attitude I had, failure was never an option. And therefore, it was either the best or nothing at all. So I think my commitment, my dedication, my focus, and everything saw us through with absolutely no cent in our coffers to being a very vibrant and successful regional organization in 2021 is sheer short of a miracle. I can't understand. And I want to thank my successor president, Dr. Kuz, yourself, and all the hosts of others who were on the different boards for our individual and collective efforts towards achieving our set goals and objectives. It wasn't easy, but I think we are now, if I might literally put it, we are now on a cruising altitude. The current president and this team may not have the type of challenges we had. It's very unique with the startups. We are charting through and navigated. We are going through uncharted waters, and so there was nothing to fall back on. No advice except the constant interjection of our benefactors, World Bank, IFAC, African Development Bank, and it was tremendous. It was like crawling out from the womb and doing a 100-meter sprint within 10 years.
Yeah, you say you were a fish out of the water, but I think you got in the big sea, and as you said, you managed to swim your own way. That's what we all do in one way or another. Dr. Musa, would you like to jump in?
What I really enjoyed in the first 3 years, actually when I was vice and General was the president, we had an issue that I still remember today. And it's an issue down to petty-mindedness of some people. I hope you've ceased to have those kind of people, because they are more interested in their personalities rather than the interests of the Pan-African Federation of Accountants. The less we have those kind of people, the better this organization is going to be. So that's the only thing I'm going to say. Thank you very much, Asma. But one thing, of course, you want us to have a role when the World Bank is appointing guys for Russ report. Very good point. But why don't we want to have a role in appointments within our own countries? I know there's a PO, you all remember this, there's a PO that is headed by a lawyer, and he's a member of PAFA, and PAFA is quiet about it. So that is generosity that starts at home. So my suggestion is, if we can influence local appointments, we should start there. And then, of course, as we go forward, the World Bank will see we are relevant and there are people within countries. And in the formation of teams, they will ask PAFA, we're going to do a RUST report in Zambia. Who can we use in Zambia? If we had a database of all the people in Zambia, we'd get send 10, 20 people and the CVs, and then they pick from that. And that'll be a way to go forward. Rather than say the AU to discuss this is going to be, in my view, a long route. Let us build the relevance, and the World Bank will have to come to us.
On the idea that, PAFA has gone through a lot of challenges and has managed through it, and that is something we should all be proud of, that we are where we are today, despite the small challenges here and there, and the big ones as well. And so I'll hand over to you, Kus, to maybe give us your perspective on this. What did you enjoy the most as PAFA president?
When one stepped into a leadership position at PAFA, you represent the organization, PAFA. You have a role as PAFA leadership. You step away from your perhaps your own national constituency, and that independence, that professionalism and ability to keep focused on the bigger outcome is what was so vital. But for me, if there is one lesson out of EXAFA and then as PAFA, is Africans are warm and friendly people. We have all sat in board meetings and leading the General Assembly. And, you know, with the best planning, sometimes the overhead projector doesn't work, or the sound system is not perfect. Little glitches happen. One fantastic lesson is that spirit of being able to laugh together, to do good business, to have hard discussions, but to be able to almost embrace each other with warmth. If I could wish one thing for IFAC, I'd say every IFAC president and vice president, if not every IFAC board member, must come and attend a PAFA board meeting and an ACOA to see the spirit of Africa, because that has what allowed it allowed and has been part of the PAFA growth, is to sometimes laugh at our differences so we can find, in that laughter, we can find our commonalities. So,
I could not say it in better words, Kus. I think I will just add to that the special thing that I really enjoyed about PAFA, it's that festive spirit that we all had outside the board meetings, and the vibe that is special to PAFA people. I think that is Africa. That's it. If we can define it that way, and it's something we should stick to like glue. Never give it up, because that's what makes us work better together for business, as you say. Because if you can take that outside, that vibe, and it has an impact somehow in the way we do business and we interact with each other, no matter what differences and what challenges we encounter, because they are part of life. But
fantastic.
I fully agree.
I think we're going to suggest that we have an African festival of accountants. And I'm really looking forward to the African Congress with its festival atmosphere in November in Mozambique.
Me too. We missed that.
Great summary there, Asma. Great. But it is that is what allows us to go past our differences.
Yeah, it does. So thank you so much. I really enjoyed this.
Thank you, Asma. Thank you, General. Thank
you very much.
Doctor.
Thank you.
Alta and her team will have a lot of ideas. We'll get a lot of ideas from this, and it's always a pleasure to go back to our old colleagues, and I consider you as colleagues and friends forever, no matter where we end up, and that is one thing that we gain from these federations. Bonjour Léonard, ravi de te revoir. J'ai une petite question pour toi. Quels ont été les principaux événements marquants de ton mandat en tant que président de PAFA?
Particulièrement par trois événements. Il y a eu la poire qui s'est passée au Maroc, qui était un événement assez sérieux pour moi et qui a regroupé l'ensemble de la profession. Le second, j'ai été marqué par l'adoption du plan stratégique Et le troisième, c'est le changement qu'il y a eu au niveau de la PAFA, qui aurait été l'événement le plus marquant pour moi. Parce que dans une institution qui est encore jeune, qui n'a pas encore toute sa maturité, opérer un changement de dirigeant au niveau des CEO, c'est un peu plus complexe. On aurait pu avoir des résistances et autre chose et tout ça. Ça s'est passé en beauté et puis ça a montré par là que l'institution peut continuer vraiment à faire son chemin. Voilà les principaux événements qui m'ont marqué. Merci.
Très bien. Et comme tu le sais, maintenant, PAFA va démarrer sa deuxième décennie.
Oui.
Donc, quels seraient les conseils que tu donnerais à PAFA pour ses prochaines 10 années d'existence?
Le premier conseil, c'est que à la PAFA, qu'on privilégie le dialogue. Ce qui est fait au niveau des conseils d'administration, c'est déjà assez bien. Le modèle qui est adopté de préparer les choses par les vice-présidents, de venir les présenter, de faire participer chaque pays. Ça, c'est déjà bien. Mais il faut que, parce qu'une jeune institution, c'est les crises. À mon entrée, c'était un peu la crise avec la dévaluation du Naira. Alors, ça a créé quelques problèmes pour que un grand État comme le Nigeria puisse facilement se retrouver. Nous, on l'a essayé de le faire avec beaucoup de tact pour que ça n'entraîne pas une crise qui pouvait avoir des conséquences très fâcheuses sur l'avenir de l'institution. Et Dieu merci, on l'a fait en faisant recours au benchmarking par rapport à ce qui se passe, ce qui se fait à l'IFAC et autres. Et on a pu sauver ça. Si on était resté hermétique sur les textes, peut-être que notre institution n'aura plus la même coloration aujourd'hui. Merci. Alors, je voulais ajouter quelque chose pour terminer. C'est par rapport à l'initiative qui a été prise de penser aux anciens présidents. Une institution se fait avec la continuité. Ceux qui ont été présidents, ils ont certainement des mémoires, les mémoires de l'institution. Donc, ce qui est fait là, avec cette brève communication, c'est important parce qu'ils ont quelque chose qu'ils peuvent apporter. Donc, je crois que c'est tout à fait à l'actif de du nouveau gouvernement et je crois que il faudrait aller de l'avant pour le refaire de cette manière. Merci.